So hello, I'm Jerry Wagner, and welcome to this presentation. I'm going to talk about Enneagram styles, resilience, eustress, and distress. And so you say, well, Jerry, why are you talking about this now? And well, I'm glad you asked, because who hasn't been experiencing stress these days? We've just come out of a pandemic, stressful except for Fives. We loved it. Mother Nature seems to be upset about us because she's doing a lot of bad things, a lot of rain, a lot of fire, a lot of tornadoes. Politicians are making us mad at them. So, there's a lot of things that are stressful going on these days. So I got to thinking about stress, and is there such a thing as good stress? Eustress. The Congressman John Lewis used to talk about good trouble. So is there some stress that actually kind of gets us revved up and excited and ready to get into the game and play the game? And then if we overdo it or underdo it, then we experience distress, bad stress. So I want to talk about that and also the resilience of each type. I was thinking about that. I mean, humans have been around for 50,000 years and change, or give or take 100,000 years. We all made it, and so like we got these 9 styles, and there must be something about each type that makes us resilient because we're still here. So what is that? And I had a chance to think about it and ask some, people who are each type, where does your resilience come from? So we'll talk about that. And also, how do you take distress and turn it into, eustress and turn it into distress? There's a chart I'm going to show you here, and there's an optimal level of arousal. This chart it's a U curve, bell curve, and looks like an old Volkswagen Beetle. And at the top of the curve is this optimal level of arousal. So you get enough excitement and enough energy and enough enthusiasm that you're really doing well. You're kind of in a flow state up there. If you underdo it, if you're kind of bored or tedious or whatever, then you are down on the left-hand side, the low level of arousal, and you fall asleep. Unless you can figure out some way to wake yourself up. Hopefully you haven't fallen asleep yet. The hell, I just started. On the other hand, if you get too excited, which you probably are now because this is really interesting stuff, your anxiety level goes up, and at the extreme, you experience panic. And so you flub that Bach passage, and your cake doesn't turn out to be exactly the way you like it. So what we need to have is just the right amount of energy and excitement, and that brings us to this optimal level of functioning. Too little, you fall asleep. Too much, you get into a panic. So we're going to take a look at that. So like the 3 little pigs, you want your porridge not too cold, not too hot, but just right. And so now that brings us to style 1. So the question is, what gets ones motivated? What do they get out of bed in the morning, kind of ready to do, enthused about at the end of the day, what made it a good day for them? So what helps them to function optimally? And what's their natural resilience? Because remember, if we contain within us all that is human, then we have all of these resiliencies in us. And I'm just going to remind you about what some of them are, in case you forgot. So what gets ones up for the game is they're wanting to perform really well. So they want to do all that they can to make a really good product. It might be a good term paper, a good chicken fricassee, a good relationship. with their spouse and children and friends. So anything that they're engaged in, they want to do really well. So ones have this passion for excellence, and they feel good when they've done something really well. So excellence is its own reward, as they say, and it's eustress at its best. So one's resilience comes from their desire to be all that they can be and to do what they're doing impeccably. So ones are the naturally persistent, they're conscientious, they're responsible, they're intense, like a laser, not a forest fire. So their idealism is a source of their resilience. They have this vision and drive to make the world a better place. And their inner sense of rightness propels them to act, and no obstacle is going to stand between them and their mission. I also asked each type, where does your authority come from? And ones will say it comes from our integrity, and it comes from that inner sense of rightness. I just know this is right. So I have the authority to speak about that. So ones might be deterred, but they're not defeated. And they're willing to sacrifice for their ideals. And they get this sense of satisfaction in doing the right thing. So ones say they appreciate order, the proper way of proceeding. They got the 3 C's: conviction, conscientiousness, clarity. All help them out, and they aid us in our journey. So I've asked ones, where does your resilience come from? And here are some words that they use to describe their resilience. Let me mention that you can take desperate notes here to get all this down, or I'm going to publish this in an article on my website, enneagramspectrum.com. And what was that again, Jerry? It's Enneagram Spectrum, all one word, .com. And I'll also send it into the IEA 9 points, and it'll be published there so you can see it. So it'll encourage you to become a member, where you can see all of these fabulous articles from the conference. All right, so what are some words? Detail, policies, order, integrity, conscientious, responsible. I've already said a lot of this. Purpose-driven, principle-centered. So if you have a purpose, it helps you survive and be resilient. So what other words? Hardworking, earnest, committed, vision, trust and basic goodness. Isn't that nice for resilience? Dutiful, like a little page from the 6 manual. Self-control, disciplined, quality-minded, precise, thorough, ethical, upstanding, organized. All those qualities make ones resilient, and we got them too. Might need to practice them. So when confronting a stressful situation, we might ask ourselves, what is the right thing to do? What does integrity require? So you might think about a situation that's causing you a little stress or conflict or something that needs to be dealt with. And I'll give you 9 ways of approaching that situation. So the one's way is, what's the right thing to do? What does integrity require? All right. So now, what's the one's version of turning good news into bad news? How do they take this eustress, which gets them ready to play, into distress, which interferes with the game? So if you want to distress yourself, tell yourself you have to be perfect. You have to do everything impeccably. If you want to be loved and accepted, then you have to be right, and you can't make mistakes. So who says so? Ones, 2, or they're 1 parents or 1 teachers, church, culture. So being a good person leads to optimal functioning. Being a perfect person leads to either why bother trying on the left side of that bell curve, or dying trying, would be on the right side, too much energy. So neither bring about particularly good results. And I'm reminded of the English essayist G.K. Chesterton, who said, anything worth doing is worth doing half well. So you're not a good clarinet player? So what? Doesn't matter. Making music is a good thing. So I figure either Chesterton was not a one or was a reformed one. So there is necessary suffering or suffering that just comes along with living. At my age, getting out of bed in the morning reminds me that suffering just comes along with being alive. Or if you love someone and they pass away, you experience sadness and grief. It's necessary suffering. On the other hand, there's a lot of unnecessary suffering, which we bring on ourselves and we really don't need to. So with the ones, they create this distress and unnecessary suffering by trying to be perfect. Too many shoulds make their blood pressure and their resentment rise. So they need to find that happy point between not trying and trying too hard. So something like, I'm doing the best I can with what I have available right now. So the 12-step program might have something to say about optimal functioning for ones. So let's talk about twos, one's next door neighbor. So what gets twos motivated, functioning optimally? And what is their natural resilience? So twos say that they enjoy giving and loving and being helpful. It's something that just flows naturally from their nature. They're attuned both innately and through practice to other people's feelings and their needs. And they just generously respond to others' requirements. So giving seems to be their version of a flow state. It's like they cannot not help. Comes easily and naturally, and is intrinsically reinforcing. Getting appreciation is a nice bonus, but not required. So seeking out connections and relationships contributes to their own as well as others' well-being. Forming community fosters their resilience. Mother Nature has figured out we have this instinct for belonging. Keeps us alive. We do better with others than on our own. So twos' optimism and their pro-social nature help them survive and thrive by giving them meaning and purpose and ferrying them through life in the company of others. Empathic attunement is a key to surviving and thriving. Love, nurturing, care keep us all going. Isolation leads to death. Relating leads to life. So twos see the best in people and care about them. So love is a powerful source of both twos' resiliency and their authority. When I ask twos, where does your authority come from? They say it comes from our love. If we are relating to you, you can trust us because you know we love you. Talking about the high side of the two. All right, so here are some words that twos use to describe their resilience. And again, this can be written down for you. So words they use are connected, related, inclusive, compassion, adaptable, humility, who would have thought, attunement, optimistic, generous, helpful, friendly, caring, supportive, encouraging, warm-hearted. All of those things help them survive and thrive. So when we are confronting a stressful situation, we might ask ourselves, what is the loving thing to do here? What does love require? It's a little variation on the theme, but worth asking. So how do twos invite distress into their lives? Well, by doing too much of what we just talked about. They're helping become something they have to do to gain approval and avoid rejection. So there's a shift in motivation. It goes from here's something I want to do to here's something I have to do. Or I'll be cast out in the wilderness. I'll be rejected. I'll be alone. I'll die. So twos erringly believe that their worth comes from giving themselves rather than simply being themselves. And for twos, to get their needs met, they have to meet everybody else's needs first. And since the rules of their paradigm says they're not allowed to ask for what they want, they have to indirectly get their needs met. And we, of course, not being twos, don't catch on to what they need since they've never expressed them. And so they then get resentful. And that brings on more stress. So how do twos reduce this brought on distress, this unnecessary suffering? Well, acknowledge and express their needs. It won't kill us or them, and surprisingly makes them even more lovable. Who would have thought? How about the threes? So what gets threes motivated, functioning optimally at the top of that curve? And what is their natural resilience? So threes get energy and satisfaction from getting things accomplished. A good day for threes is when they got a lot done. They like progress. They like to win. A particularly irascible, famous tennis player who will not be named said it wasn't so much winning that he liked, he hated losing. So threes enjoy promoting their products and rallying their team. Where else does their resilience come from? Well, they value movement. Motion is the lotion, as my physician likes to say. Doesn't get me off the couch, but I can see some merit to that. So when an obstacle presents itself, keep moving. It's like water going towards the sea. This tree isn't going to stop me. This rock isn't going to stop me. This house isn't going to stop me. I go around it, go over it, go under it, go through it. But whatever it is, that obstacle, don't let it stop you from getting to your goal. So it could be that threes were the original peripatetic philosophers. They thought best while walking. Pushing, challenging, competing, get their energy up. So like the little engine that could, they believe they can do it. I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. And like the phoenix rising from the ashes, threes don't stay down for the count very long. For them, failures are just learning experiences for what doesn't work. Try something else. Don't give up. And so this go-get-em attitude keeps threes and us going. Remember, we got this in us too. So their confidence, competence, and enthusiasm carry them and us along. So what are some words that threes use in describing their resilience? Well, a lot of the words that we just used. Here's what they say: efficient, competent, get things done, don't waste time, network, motivated by challenges, optimistic, that seems to come up for a lot of types, hope, can't beat it, self-motivated, friendly, outgoing, positive, enthusiastic, confidence, can-do attitude, multitasking, they're industrious. So Erickson talks about a stage of development, industry versus inferiority, learning how to work with others and bring a project to completion, being industrious. Sounds like a three. They're focused, they're persevering, they're proactive, they keep moving, organized, adaptable. Oh, God, all these words for threes. They're self-driven, dynamic, pragmatic, ambitious, and productive. What's not to like there? So all those things we also can have access to. So when confronting a stressful situation, we might ask ourselves on the threes, what is the most productive and effective thing to do here? What will get results? All right, so you ask yourselves, okay, that all sounds good. So what if threes bring on unnecessary suffering? How do they distress themselves? Just doing more of the same. They push themselves too much. They strain their emotional and physical muscles. Their body wears out and the psyche gets depressed. So instead of bringing us along with them, they either run over us or drag us along. So they're either out there ahead of us alone, or they're running with logs tied to their legs. And that would be us. So like all the types who have to work with people who are on their team, they need to turn us into themselves and make us more effective. Two's got to make us more loving. One's really got their work cut out to fix us. So, and believe me, there's a lot in us that need to be fixed. Just ask the ones. So the threes manufacture the wrong idea that they must succeed. Again, those have tos. They must succeed in order to be admired and be sent to the head of the class or the corner office instead of relegated to the back row of the class or the cubicle. So threes confuse being effective with being a workaholic. Too much of a good thing. Burning out is the threes version of the phoenix. Fortunately, as we saw, they frequently rise from the ashes of bankruptcy, divorce, lost tournaments, and so forth. So when we're in a flow state, our actions flow effortlessly. When we're rushing instead of flowing, we miss the present. And as the proverb advises, slow down and smell the roses, which brings us to beauty and the fours. So what gets fours motivated? Functioning optimally, what is their natural resilience? So fours function well in the sea of feelings and imagination. Their feelings give them energy. Their imagination gives them hope and direction. So fours remind us that creativity is a very healing and life-giving, as is beauty. As Abraham Maslow points out, we can only take so much ugliness before we get sick to our stomach and soul. A forest cleansing refreshes the spirit. So fours are sensitive to suffering, their own and others, and that helps them process it and find meaning in it, which is a source of resiliency in fours. It addresses those four givens that existentialists talk about. Cheery topics like death, responsibility, isolation, meaninglessness. Subjects that most of us would prefer to avoid. But fours invite us to the depths of our existence. While we might say, no thanks, they say, don't be afraid of the dark. Make friends with your shadow. There's a lot of good stuff in there. So fours recognize the value of suffering. Their long suffering helps them endure and deepen. They can find meaning and significance in sorrow. And they can take in suffering and turn it into a creative malady. Many of the traditional classical therapists did that. Freud and Adler and Jung dealt with their issues and then helped others deal with the same issues. Through mastering their struggle, they can guide us through ours. So their suffering doesn't have to turn them in on themselves, but can lead them to being wounded healers. So fours have that inner power of emotion and connection. And they can expand to take in the breadth and depth of feelings. That capacity draws others to them and connects them to the mainland. They're no longer that island apart from the main. So their ongoing search for meaning and authenticity enriches all of our lives. Their spirituality gives them a longing to get through the dark, to get to the light. So when we are confronting a stressful situation, we might ask ourselves, what would our authentic self do? How can we bring beauty to bear in this situation? Here are some words that fours use in describing their resilience when I've asked them. So presence, awareness, depth, creativity, imagination, think outside the box, meeting, connection, passion, balance, equanimity, vision, capacity to endure pain. They're expressive, creative, sensitive, original, intuitive, perceptive, unique. And so are we. So fours don't need to be envious, nor do we. We all got it. Okay, so how do fours bring on distress and unnecessary suffering versus those necessary losses that come with existence? Well, they spend too much time in the shadows and not enough time in the light. Their melancholy or sweet sadness descends into depression, and they tire of life. Their suffering makes them special, and it appears in their subtypes when they become long suffering, or wear their suffering on their sleeves, or make us suffer for all that we've done to them. So the self-pres, social, intimate. So fours get the wrong idea that there's something wrong with them and that they are missing something. So actually, it's their ego that misses what's there. They might salubriously repeat the mantra, right now, I have everything I need to be perfectly happy. Let me repeat that mantra. Right now, I have everything I need to be perfectly happy. No need to be depressed or enviously look around at others' good fortune. You already have what you are longing for. So remember Dorothy and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion. And they all realized, Dorothy realized she was already home, and the Scarecrow realized he already had a brain. The Tin Man discovered he already had a heart, and the Cowardly Lion discovered he had courage, guts. So all these three centers bring us home, just like those three characters helped Dorothy find her way home. So you're already home. Fabulous. All right. Fives. So what gets fives motivated, functioning optimally? What's their natural resilience? Well, whereas fours live in the sea of feelings and imagination, fives function well in the land of concepts. Thinking turns them on. Their passions are of the mind. This may sound pathetic unless you are a five. But a little analysis, a little connecting the dots, a little seeing how this situation fits in with the big picture, a little research into the best product for the best price, All these get fives excited and up for the game. Fives love to learn. If you asked a five, what made it a good day? I learned something today. Fours, I had a deep connection to somebody. Threes, I got a lot done. Twos, oh, I helped somebody. Ones, I fixed something or someone. So five's ability to detach, to stand back, but not stand down. Their ability to be objective, let their inner observer notice what's going on, are all sources of resilience for fives. In Karen Horney's theory, in the circumstances we find ourselves in, we all need to either move towards in cooperation, move against in assertion, move away from in detachment. So we have all these trends available to us. We tend to prefer one over the other, but we can use them all. Fives tend to get the moving away from down well. Eights specialize in moving against, and twos are really good at moving towards. But we need and we have the capacity to do all three. So fives are good listeners, perceptive. Then they need to act on what they hear and see. So when they let themselves experience, they learn good judgment from their experience. And experience comes from bad judgments. We learn from our mistakes. And hence the gift of the five, wisdom. Combination of reason and feeling. So by showing us how to use it, fives remind us that we all have an inner observer, an internal bear witness. So fives can step back to unattach and observe. What did Yogi Berra said? You learn a lot you can learn a lot just by watching. So this freedom, this detachment allows fives to make wise decisions from an objective distance. They can get the whole picture and then contribute to, challenge, or step away from the scene, move towards, against, away from. So looking before leaping doesn't mean not acting. It means mindful acting. Prudence, being guided by reason, can be effective, not as boring as it sounds. So when confronting a stressful situation, we might ask ourselves, along with the fives, what would our wise self say about this? What's the reasonable thing to do? What makes sense? So five's resilience shows up as an ability to weather difficult and intense emotions through this distancing and objectivity. Through perspective taking to see all sides of a situation before reacting. Through creating and maintaining boundaries in various settings. By persevering, especially when learning something new, like meditation techniques, coding, whatever. Takes time and effort, practice. And by being self-reliant and not taking things so personally. So when I ask fives, what makes you resilient? They say things like logical problem solving, analysis, science, non-attachment, innovation, objective, being observant, clarity, figure it out, flexibility in models, curiosity, critical thinking, being innovative, observant, knowledgeable, reasonable, analytical, all those things, self-reliant, and detached in a good sense, stepping back. All right, so how do fives distress themselves? Like every other type, do too much of a good thing. They think too much and may experience analysis paralysis. They forget that sometimes The heart has reasons that reason knows not of. Thank you, Blaise Pascal. And sometimes the body knows and keeps the score. Thank you, Bessel van der Kolk. Sometimes fives need to cede their head's pride of place to their heart or gut, or keep all three, IQ, EQ, and SQ, intellectual quotient, emotional quotient, and somatic quotient intelligence. Thank you, George Gurdjieff, the fourth way. So backing into their cave and refusing to come out leads to unnecessary suffering for fives. It gets cold, sparse, and boring in the castle. Fives fear being deprived. But who's doing the depriving? Well, if fives believe the world is withholding, they offer their own withholding in return. So fives deprive themselves. In addition, their loner stance leads to not speaking up, not saying what they want or don't want, and not asking for help. All of which bring more trouble and suffering than they would have us believe. Which seems like a protective way of being in the world, actually is a very depriving, withholding way. All right, how about the sixes? Hey, how about them? So what gets sixes motivated, functioning optimally, and what is their natural resilience? All right, the good and the bad news for sixes is their fear and anxiety get them up for the game. Too little energy, they fall asleep like nines. Too much anxiety, they tremble and doubt like, well, sixes. And just the right amount of stimulation, and they function really well like threes. There's that inner triangle. So a modicum of worst case scenario thinking leads to troubleshooting, problem solving, being prepared, coming up with plans A through Z. Mother Nature has built in an alarm system in the amygdala to help us survive, and so we can thrive. Little self-preservation. But when the alarm is stuck on red alert, sixes spend a lot of energy on mythical monsters. They're good at scaring themselves. Their natural safety features malfunction. You know, it's like the check engine light on your car when you don't really need to check the engine. Or when their safety features overfunction and they become debilitating rather than life-saving. So Mother Nature has also figured out, as we saw earlier, that we survive and thrive best when we are with others. So sixes are good groupies. They contribute their skills to the group, like, hey, fellow zebras, there's a lion over there. And the group in turn shares its wisdom with sixes through culture. Nice mutual exchange. So being cautious is not a bad way to stay alive. Sixes have been around a long time because they're careful. Their skepticism keeps them and us from being misled. Considering the pitfalls of any given action and devising a strategy to deal with those eventualities, sixes make really good troubleshooters. Not only do they look before they leap, they have contingency plans for what might happen after they leap. And sixes also value the law. It keeps us all safe and operating within the limits of healthy functioning. If we take in too much sugar, salt, alcohol, or too much of anything, if we experience too much injustice, ugliness, abuse, lifelessness, we get physically and psychically sick. And if we're lacking all the things we need, like, like oxygen, food, water, sleep, also not very good for the psyche or the soma. So sixes are careful about deficiencies and excesses. They keep us all alive and growing. So when you're confronting a stressful situation, we might ask ourselves, what's the safest choice in this situation? What is the prudent thing to do? Here are the words that sixes use to describe their resilience. They get their security from relationships. They're good at threat forecasting. Their fear leads to confidence, paradoxically. They're engaging, responsible, reliable, prepared, dutiful, sensible, loyal, trustworthy, faithful, sound like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, oath, truth-seeking, like the eights. They're committed, they're persevering, they're stable, good in crisis. They're vigilant, questioning, hard workers, courageous. They have contingency plans, values. They value tradition. And they're good at early warning, signaling, and rules and laws help them survive. All right, so like the rest of us, sixes bring on distress when they engage in too much of a good thing. They often see danger where there isn't any. They get a lot of false positives, which means they leave the building in the middle of the night when there isn't a fire. On the other hand, staying in the building when there is a fire, a false negative, isn't such a great idea either. So being alert to hidden intentions or creatures lurking in the bushes is beneficial. Being paranoid paradoxically leaves one isolated, which Mother Nature discovered was not a good defense. So while a little self-doubt saves one from the downfall of the proud and overconfident, too much doubt leads to not trusting oneself or others. So goodbye self-efficacy. Hello over-reliance on or suspicion of outer authorities. Erik Erikson said that trust and mistrust were skills to be learned in the very first stage of our development. Too much trust and we are Pollyannas. Too much distrust and we are paranoids. Just the right amount of both and we are perfect. But we've already talked about the ones, so what about the Pollyannas? What gets sevens motivated, functioning optimally? And what's their natural resilience? Well, sevens are blessed with an optimistic, sunny, enthusiastic, curious, creative nature. What's not to like? As Seven said, doesn't everybody want to be a seven? All of this leads to the unsinkable Molly Brown. Sevens just keep coming back. We'll see that this is not an unmixed blessing, this keep coming back for more, but the optimum amount of optimistic good cheer makes sevens very resilient. It's very hard to keep a helium balloon underwater. So sevens have the ability to soar above or ahead of troubles. Their facility to plan for future fun-filled possibilities gets them moving forward. In their worldview, the world is their oyster. It's filled with adventure and all good things. So this is a definite improvement over other worldviews, such that the universe is critical, say the ones, selfish, twos, chaotic, threes, abandoning, fours. The world is withholding, fives. It's dangerous, sixes, hostile, eights, uncaring, nines. So as sevens say, who wouldn't want to be a seven? We got a much better worldview than you all have. So optimism is a powerful prophylactic. A positive mindset helps us see options, gives us the hope to pursue those options. Seven's buoyancy keeps them afloat and moving forward. So while the brain is said to be Velcro for negative experiences, we remember all the bad things, and Teflon for positive experiences, we forget the good things. Sevens accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. Positive thinking can lead to effective action, while negative thinking can stop the show. Being positive doesn't have to be Pollyannish. Hoping for the best provides the energy to go for it. So Maslow wrote about the farther reaches of human nature, what human beings are capable of. And sevens are exploring that. And we, like them, all have that adventuresome spirit. So when confronting a stressful situation, we might ask ourselves, what is the most heuristic option? Say what? What leads to the most choices? If we have one choice, we're stuck. If we have two choices, we have a dilemma. If we have three choices, we have an option. So the words that sevens used in describing their resilience are diversity, different plans and strategies, adaptable, partnership, visionary, positive reframe, inner bounce back, fast action, optimism, gratitude, joie de vivre, energy, hope, laughter, confidence, flexible, inclusive, engaging, joy, happy, dreamers, seeing possibilities, enthusiasm, innovation, wow, connections, spontaneous, versatile, visionary, charming, lighthearted, friendly, innovative. No wonder they've been around a long time. All right, so how do sevens bring on stress and unnecessary suffering? How do they push their optimal level of functioning to over-functioning or under-functioning? Well, they try too hard to stay up and avoid getting down. So their fear is once depressed, always depressed. They're never going to get out of it. So look up and look ahead. But their FOMO, fear of missing out, ironically leads them to missing out on some good things. They don't believe that anything useful can come from the winter of our discontent. Things do grow in the cold and the dark. Think of winter. Suffering can be redemptive. Desolation can be as beneficial and growthful as consolation. And all that's pretty much of a stretch for sevens. So try it. You might not like it, but you might find out that it's good for you. So by spending too much time in the future, sevens don't savor the present, which is the only real time. They believe that when they get there, they'll be happy. Actually, it's when they get here that they'll be happy and fulfilled. So their future-focused fantasies pull them out of the nourishing, satisfying experiences in the present. How about their neighbor, the eights? What gets eights motivated, functioning optimally, and what's their natural resilience? So eights are said to have the most energy of all the Enneagram types. They are naturally robust, vital, confident, decisive. They believe in carpe diem, take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves, strike while the iron is hot, especially useful for blacksmiths. So obstacles are challenges, not showstoppers. An initial no is just the opening gamut to getting to yes. So eights take pride in being independent, autonomous, their own person. As Fritz Perls, the founder of Gestalt therapy, pronounced, they're not here to live up to our expectations. They do their thing, we do our thing. So eights are not overburdened by unnecessary guilt. They have a winner, come out on top mentality that makes them very resilient. Guess who forgot to turn off his answering machine? When the going gets tough, the tough get going or get shopping. But that's the previous type. So with their positive outlook, magnanimous heart, and storehouse of energy, eights are equipped to survive and thrive. They have a sense of confidence and competence. Their motto is, I can do it. And as the saying goes, success comes in cans, failure comes in can'ts. This can-do spirit keeps them going in the face of adversity and occasional defeat. Eights are not afraid of their own power and are not afraid to use it, nor do they seem especially intimidated by anyone else's power. So getting big, powering up is one way to survive, just as getting small and disappearing is another way to survive. We all have this expansive capacity in us, as well as the ability to shrink. When we need to, we can get solid, strong, and upstanding. The eight's sense of justice also impels them, which helps them thrive and others survive. So when confronting a stressful situation, we might ask ourselves, what is the just thing to do? What does justice require of us? How much force do I need to bring to bear to move this situation forward? So words that eights use to describe their resilience, many of the same ones we've just talked about. Their will-do attitude and energy, their resolve and intensity, their inner core of strength. Full steam ahead. The attitude, this will not happen again. There's always a way out versus feeling powerless. Energy, anger, justice, making decisions. Strength, being a problem solver, enthusiastic, bold, risk taker, confidence, big, direct, zeal, force. This can-do, decisive attitude. So they're assertive, direct, self-determined, big-hearted, low eights. Dealing with the situation here and now, going full out, full in, denying fatigue and pain. All those things make eights resilient. So how do they turn their eustress into distress? Well, by living with too much gusto, intensity, independence. So they overdo. We're interdependent beings, not too dependent, not too independent. Balance. So eights tend to skip the scale, tip the scale to independent, then find themselves unsupported. Their tough shell protects their tender innards, but it doesn't let that inner self be nourished and grow. They bring about suffering by sensing slights where there might not be any, then feeling indignant and disrespected, and then getting angry, then getting feisty or getting even. Vengeance is mine, saith the eight. So most of this is made up and so unnecessary. They fire up their sympathetic nervous system for a fight that may not have to happen. Fighting for the underdog is good. Fighting imaginary enemies is exhausting. And speaking of being exhausted, what gets nines motivated, functioning optimally? And what is their natural resilience? Now, motivation in nines seems like an oxymoron. So what gets them moving and unsettled? Perhaps conflict acts as a negative reinforcement. So with positive reinforcement, you give someone something they want. With negative reinforcement, you remove something the person doesn't want. Either works to increase the desired behavior. So negative reinforcement creates an obnoxious situation that creates discomfort, pain, anxiety, and we are stimulated to remove that. So think about a fire alarm that creates a pain in the ear, which leads to leaving the building. A nagging parent creates a pain in the ear, which leads to taking out the garbage or doing your homework. A tantrum-throwing 2-year-old creates a pain in the ear, which leads to giving them an ice cream cone, toy, or whatever. So conflict makes nines anxious and moves them to employ their best negotiating and mediating skills to reduce the conflict. Procrastination also initially lessens anxiety. Avoidance behavior shows up here in negative reinforcement. Avoid what makes you uncomfortable. But we're talking about positive strategies here. So staying calm, unflappable, and steady in the face of adversity contributes to the nine's resilience. Their adaptable nature helps them fit into their surroundings to survive and thrive. They can even adapt to inhospitable environments. We all need these strategies given the current happenings in nature and politics. So when nines are functioning optimally, they don't get in their own way. They go with the flow. They don't push, reverse, drain, pollute, or otherwise disturb the river. Promoting peace and harmony are ways that nines found to survive and grow. Looking for ways to resolve conflict and bring opposing parties together and seeing polarities as two sides of the same coin, all those things have enabled nines to be around for a long time. Union works better than division, though optimally there can be differentiation within unity and harmony. A peaceful nature, live and let live, is a resilient nature. An attitude of acceptance, trusting the flow of the universe, and going with the flow is an effortless way of allowing the unfolding of oneself, others, and the cosmos. But really, there is only one unfolding, and that unitary consciousness is what nines realize. So when confronting a stressful situation, we might ask ourselves, what approach will bring about the most acceptance, peace, harmony, and integration? So some words that nines use to describe their resilience is reconcile, mediate, network, calm, patient, allowing, encouraging, collegial, peace, inclusive, connect the dots, taking a page from the fives, facilitator, take various perspectives, accepting, open, flexible, curious, receptive, all these good things, patient, reassuring, unassuming, diplomatic, gentle, kind, down to earth, peacemaker versus peacekeeper, and resolve conflict versus avoid conflict. Ebb, the 9, and flow, the 3. All right, so how does being calm bring about distress, you say? Well, you can burn if you don't get out of the fiery forest, or drown if you don't get away from the flooding river. So nines might stay in a dysfunctional family or with an abusive partner much longer than is healthy for them. Doing nothing doesn't necessarily bring about change. So leaning into their 8 or 1 wings might be a more proactive way to go. Avoiding conflict doesn't make problems go away, just postpones them. And oftentimes the conflict is worse when you don't deal with the situation right away. Avoiding distress at the beginning brings about distress at the end. Although nines do say they function efficiently an hour before the deadline is due. Perhaps this is their version of eustress or optimal level of arousal. They arouse themselves from their self-protective lethargy, get focused, get busy, get the job done. Actually, that sounds a lot like the 9 accessing their inner 3. The turtle turns into the hare at the finish line. All right. So if I haven't driven you into a state of deep sleep by now, I will summarize by saying and reminding you that each Enneagram style has its own brand of resilience. That's why they're still around. So each adaptive strategy contributes to the well-being and continued being of the community. Mother Nature has evolved and given us some good instincts and styles. So the right amount of stress, excitement, and arousal lead to optimal functioning. Too much or too little energy lead to suboptimal functioning. Eustress gets us up for the game, Distress takes us out of the game. So in short, stop distressing yourself and start eustressing yourself. Going to be good for all of us. So thank you for listening in. And again, you can find this eventually on my website, enneagramspectrum.com, and on the 9 points bulletin for the International Enneagram Association. So stay well, and I'll see you around the Enneagram circle. Bye-bye for now.